Hi, I'm Justina from Practice Academy, and this is the second video in our costing method series. And in this one, Neesha covers service costing, how you establish the cost of a service rather than a physical product. Service costing is relevant across the accounting world. It appears in ACCA, in CMA, and any other qualification that you are sitting. It's just as relevant in practice for anyone working in or with service-based businesses. This applies both to businesses that are entirely service-based, like hotels, consultancies, or transport companies, and to manufacturing companies that have internal service departments like IT or maintenance. Neesha also covers the 4 key characteristics of a service: intangibility, inseparability, perishability, and heterogeneity, which are important to understand whether you are sitting in an exam or working in an industry. Over to you, Neesha.
With regards to service costing, basically, as the word refers or the word indicates, service costing is basically all about establishing the cost of a service, not an item of production. So, just like we learned for job costing or, for an instance, batch costing, we take the total cost we incur in a period and we divide it by the number of, in this case, service units. So how many units or how many times that service were we able to render using the total cost incurred? So that's how we can evaluate or estimate the cost per service unit. Now, when do we need to use service costing? Service costing is obviously going to be useful, going to be used for the service industry. If you operate in the service industry, you're offering a service, maybe teaching, maybe electrical services, hotels, car hiring. So a few examples given here. The list goes on. Of any service you provide, you will need to use service costing. In addition, sometimes even production companies, manufacturing companies will have certain services it offers, or departments that offer services. For an example, a manufacturing company, like you learned under absorption costing, will have service departments. Maybe the maintenance service department, the maintenance department, maybe the canteen. Now, these are not production departments, but they're service departments. So they will incur cost. They will incur cost, and they too, to identify the cost of these services, we might be able to use service costing. So examples are given here. For an example, the computer department of an organization. They might computer department even in manufacturing organizations, or distribution department of a manufacturing organization. It's a service. So therefore, these are the two instances we will use service costing, either when the company is the product itself is a service, or when there is a service given within the company or the organization. So we come to the idea of what are the characteristics of a service. To identify something as a service, what characteristics should it meet? So in this instance, we can just simply think of a good example. So we can think of, maybe for an instance, me recording this lecture or giving this tutorial to you. So one is, you cannot touch, you cannot physically hold the service I offer you. Yes, maybe the tutorial note, if you have a printout of it or if you have it in your laptop or desktop, you might be able to touch it. But the service in itself is intangible. You cannot touch it. You simply have to experience it. So as you watch through this recording, this video lecture, you will be able to experience my service. You cannot touch it. At the same time, it's inseparable. That means it's generally produced and consumed simultaneously. This is very interesting to see that since this is not a live tutorial session, it's not produced and consumed simultaneously. So that is because of modern technology. But Generally speaking, a service is produced and consumed simultaneously. So the service provider is an integral part of the process. So if I was giving you one-on-one tutoring, my service will be produced and you will consume my service at the same time. And therefore, we come to the aspect of quality. So quality of my service may differ. Maybe the service I give you today, or maybe how I handle the lesson today, will differ if I handled it during a different time of the day even. Maybe when I was more tired, maybe when I was more relaxed. My service quality will change. Then perishability. So generally speaking, a service cannot be stored. Service cannot be stored. We cannot hold it in inventories to resell. Once it's performed, it's consumed, so it is perishable. Then we have heterogeneity, that is, it's highly variable. The service today can differ from the service tomorrow. It will change. So this is the characteristics of any service. Of course, what should be mentioned is with modern technology, we find ways to make services tangible. We find ways to make services less perishable and more homogeneous. So that is, of course, in turn, we are converting. What we're really doing is we are converting certain elements of a service, to a product or to a good. Now that's what's happening here. For an example, the recording is we're converting it into a tangible good. But the service alone in itself will have these characteristics. Then come to the concept of composite cost units. Now this is not unique just to service costing. Here what we're simply referring to is we calculate the cost of a product or service combining various costs, not just one cost. So we combine material cost, total labor cost, overhead cost, and then we get a total cost, and this is divided by the number of units delivered, produced, and we get a unit cost. So that's just basically composite cost units. We are getting our total cost as a contribution of different cost items. Then we can move on to a simple question, not a complicated one. Because actually, if you look at service costing too, when you talk about pricing, it is very similar to job costing. You simply add a margin, a markup, which we'll discuss now. But we'll see how service cost calculation can be done. So we have, in the previous year, the following information was collected. Total kilograms of excess baggage carried was 35,000 kilograms. Total miles, or in this instance, I think I would say kilometers. I would just change this to kilometers. The baggage was carried was 25,000 kilometers. Total cost incurred due to extra fuel was $5 million. What is the cost of carrying an extra 5 kilograms for an extra 5,000 kilometers? So to do this, we need to find the cost per kilogram of extra baggage per extra kilometer carried. So then we have this 5 million, which is the cost that we have got for the excess baggage carried, which was 35,000, multiplied by 25,000 kilometers travel. The answer we get here will be the answer we are looking for. So approximately this will be the answer, 0.0057. So then what is the cost of carrying extra 5 kilograms and extra 5,000 kilometers? We simply need to multiply this by 5 kilograms into 5,000 kilometers. 5,000 kilometers. The answer we get here should be 142.50. This is our extra cost of offering the service maybe, and that would be taken into consideration. So not new here, you're simply using, just understanding the concept of service costing. So basically, when we charge customers for services, it's like I mentioned a minute or two ago, it's the same as for job costing. We simply can add a markup to the selling price or to the cost of offering the service to determine the price we are going to, or the cost of this, or the rate we're going to charge for the service. So if you look at service department costing, however, now this is where we're talking about, now first we focused on a service industry. Now service department costing, which can be a part of even a product or a product manufacturing company. Here we need to identify what is the cost of that internal service. So what is the cost of the internal service provided by the department? So here the focus is not selling it to external customers, but it is to the cost of offering a service to another department. So therefore, what's the reason for determining service department costing? Because if you look at a product, or if you look at costing for a service, we want to charge it to a customer. But if you look at costing a service department, we're not really directly charging a customer for the service, for the canteen that the manufacturing company has. Rather, by identifying the cost, we can control overall cost, which is ultimately going to affect our profitability, and to manage efficiency. At the same time, we want to prevent the unnecessary use of the service. If we are having in a company, in a organization, an unnecessary usage of the cafeteria services, or even the maintenance services, or distribution services, or the computer department, where for an example, the employees of the other departments cannot even handle simple aspects of troubleshooting to manage their IT-related needs in the company, this is an issue. It's an unnecessary usage of the service. We would need more IT workers in the computer department when it's not necessary. So to control the cost, to manage efficiency, to eliminate unnecessary costs, it is useful and it is important to identify the cost of service departments. So that's where service department costing comes into play. So then, how do we, now this becomes effective, or we can correct the action of departments, or we can discourage departments from using a service unnecessarily if we charge them to relevant departments. So I think we did this when we did marginal costing, so you have a good idea on this. For an example, the cutting department of a company. So we'll assume cutting department uses the canteen. So only if we allocate a proportion of canteen cost to the cutting department will we be able to discourage overuse of the canteen, or percentage of computer department cost to the canteen, to the cutting department, we will be able to discourage them from running to the computer department very soon, or always rather. So therefore, what's the basis for charging service costs? So there can be different bases. So one is you learned, absorption costing could be used, maybe based on actual cost incurred. So if, for an example, the canteen can have actual amount of cost incurred due to a particular department, that can be included. Sometimes there isn't any charge at all, but this is not recommended because this doesn't hold for accountability. Maybe based on variable cost, maybe based on opportunity cost, foregone time, foregone resources, or maybe cost plus a margin of profit. So that's when we are maybe trying to create the concept of that service department being a separate entity. So for an example, this might be a good thing for a canteen. For a canteen, this might be a good thing to identifying a cost plus a margin, because we might be able to charge employees. So this is how some of the bases or the basis for charging service cost of departments into product or other general departments of the organization. So the third one, of course, we did discuss, so you should have a good idea about that. If you cannot remember, please go back, refer to chapter 8. So in our final video, we'll be discussing about the concept of activity-based costing and life cycle costing and target costing.
That was Neesha on service costing. The main things to remember: service costing applies both to service businesses and to internal service departments within manufacturing companies. And the 4 characteristics, intangible, inseparable, perishable, and heterogeneous, are worth learning, as I said, because they are tested across multiple accounting qualifications. In the final video of this series, Neesha covers 3 modern costing concepts: ABC costing, life cycle costing, and target costing. If you are studying for ACCA and CMA and you want to test yourself with exam-style questions, our question bank is linked in the description.